All right. So, Leila, welcome to the Tesla Pod, right?
Yeah.
So you spend your time, right, helping people who's built their businesses for over 30 years time, right?
Yeah.
And this car is like now driving itself. Where do you think America stands? What's a better reflection? Is it your customer or this whole self-driving technology that we see in SF?
Yeah, definitely. There's this quote that I really love. It says, like, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed.
Hmm.
And I think in SF, we are living in a reality that is not necessarily the same one as in other places in the US. So I'd say my customers are really the true reflection of where America's at right now. And I'm really trying to bridge those two gaps and bring the future to places it hasn't quite reached yet.
Yeah, because I mean, it's a very, very interesting problem that you're working on,
Thank
right?
you. Yeah.
I mean, when I first heard about it as well, I mean, it was very, very intriguing, right? So, for ones who don't really know about Silver Surf, why don't you give like a 30 seconds intro?
Yeah, definitely. So SilverSurf is an AI native brokerage for selling small businesses. We help small business owners who've been running their companies for 30, 40, however many years, sell their company, exit, and get a good price. And we use AI to get them the best possible outcome in that.
Right, right. So, uh, whose face do you see, like, early in the morning when you wake up, right? What drives you to, like, build this thing?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of the impetus behind like even getting started in this was my own parents.
Hmm.
They were small business owners for their entire careers. And just watching them and their exit, luckily they had a great one, but just seeing how little infrastructure was in place got me really wanting to work in this domain and build out more infrastructure that I wish they had when they were exiting.
Right, right, right. I see. And then, I mean, you have a pretty interesting story, right? So you worked at Google, you were at TikTok before, right? So,
Yeah,
and these are like, amazing comp packages that like, everyone really dreams of getting into, right?
sure.
But you decided to leave all of that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
even when you leave, right, usually what's happening in SF is you would start an AI native startup probably, right? So
yeah,
what really made you want to, I mean, yes, your parents perspective, that's great, right? but
yeah,
but why this problem, Leila? Why do you
definitely.
think that this is really big?
I think two things, like the scale of the problem and then also the amount of attention that it's getting. So, as far as the scale, we're on the verge of what is called like the largest wealth transfer in history.
Hmm.
There's never been this amount of small business owners all retiring in one go. And when I learned about the success rate of actually being able to sell, I was just amazed at like how low it is. It's about 30% right now.
Right.
And at the same time, I was seeing AI
30% of the
advance.
businesses only sell or
Yeah, are able to successfully sell.
right,
70% end up closing down. So
right,
thinking about the scale and the impact that it's going to have on our economy, I think was really, really compelling to me.
right.
And at the same time, I'm watching AI make all these evolutions and these leaps and bounds,
Hmm.
but no one's really applying it to this domain yet. And it feels like the people around me aren't paying attention to it.
Hmm.
So the combination of those two things, it just felt like the largest and most exciting thing I could be working on.
Hmm. Because I mean, this is very interesting, right? Because like if you think about it, right? So then, I mean, someone's built these businesses, right? So for all their lives, right? So then,
Sure.
and these like they are baby, right? So then, and most of the time the problem is like probably their children don't really want to take these up, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a main problem, right? And then I was like somewhat diving into Silver Tsunami as well, and I don't think a lot of people have heard about it also, right? So why don't you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, definitely. So the Silver Tsunami is this concept that over the next 10 years, 3 million baby boomers who own businesses are going to need to exit their businesses somehow. And currently, the success rate of that is 1 in 3. But the issue is that put together, these companies are worth about $6 trillion. dollars.
Right.
So you're talking about like $4 trillion dollars of market cap that can just be wiped out overnight if we don't start acting now. And yeah, I think it's perhaps one of the most overlooked problems that the US is currently facing at this moment.
Right. What are the problems right now? I mean, why can't they, like, I mean, these are, I mean, you look at most of these AI native startups here, right? Some of them, they don't have revenue even, right? So,
Yeah.
but they've raised like, millions of dollars, right?
Right,
So,
yeah.
but these are businesses that have a very good foundation, right? And have
Sure.
been built over time. They are like, superstars in their local communities, right?
Yeah.
So, what is stopping them from actually selling these businesses?
Yeah, definitely. So right now, as a small business owner, you're kind of between a rock and a hard place. You're either gonna go to what's called like a business broker, and they're gonna help you sell your business, and they'll probably get you a pretty good deal, but
Hmm,
they'll also take 10% of your company's value,
hmm,
which is quite a lot for someone who's been working for like, 40 some plus years for a person to take 10% of everything they've ever built.
hmm.
And then the other option that 80% of owners do because they're scared off by the 10% fee is they'll try and DIY their sale themselves. So they'll come in with no M&A experience and then they'll try and sell their company. And usually what that means, it means they're posting it on Craigslist. It means they're just kind of like sharing their financials with strangers. And a lot of times getting ripped off in the process of that. So there's really two options right now, and neither of them is serving owners very well. So that's why I'm trying to build like a third path that gets the best of both worlds and offers it to small business owners.
Right, right, right. So, I mean, one of the things that you're speaking about is ESOPs, right? So,
Yeah.
that, I mean, is that the main approach that you're suggesting, or, I mean, why don't you enlighten us on the approach that you're really taking on this?
Yeah, definitely. So ESOPs are short for employee stock ownership
Right.
plans, and essentially they're a way for a business owner to sell the company to its own employees. And that was really the entry point that got me into this whole world of things. I just got really obsessed with ESOPs and started learning more about the broader space.
Hmm.
But one thing I found with them is like it's already a big challenge to be approaching a business owner and talking to them about their exit, and it's another one to start introducing them to a new kind of exit that they've never heard about before. So I've sort of pivoted away from ESOPs for now, at least, and more
Right.
focused on like traditional sales. And really, the service that I give owners is a few things. So it's helping them like clean up their financials and clarify like how much they're actually making. Another one is just doing their marketing materials and getting all the value of their business like onto paper. And then finally, it's like taking them out to market and like marketing them in a way that gets them the best possible outcome and best possible deal for their business.
Right. Is this done in the form of a service, or is this a platform? Or, I mean, say that I own a laundromat here, right? So then,
Yeah,
and I build it like over time. Now I'm looking at exploring to work with you, right? Trying to
right.
find the buyers, right? All this. So then, like, what's the approach, right? Is it a portal that I get into, right? And then start working, or is it like a service that I sign up with you? How does it work?
Yeah, so we call ourselves an AI native services company. So on the front end, it looks like a services company. We're working one on one with the business owners.
Hmm,
But anything that is not like the face to face interaction with the business owner, all our back office operations, we've entirely automated with AI. And so that lets us provide that personalized approach to our clients while still maintaining margins that are a lot better than a traditional services firm. And the reason why we do this approach is because selling your business is such a deeply emotional thing, and we think that if you simply just give the tool directly to the owner and you just like give it to them to use themselves,
hmm.
that is a lot less compelling than like this also selling on top of that the emotional assurance of
Yeah.
having a professional in the loop as well.
Got it. Right, right. So, now what would the approach be, right? So then now when I'm selling, right? So, you like, you would first do an audit and then progress forward, right? So, what is, I mean, like, and because this AI native agencies or AI native services, right? That's actually an upcoming space which I've seen quite a lot, right?
Yeah.
So, how does the exact process look like, right? And then at the same time, like, how does this, like, differ from like a traditional sort of services organization?
Yeah, definitely. So as compared to a traditional services firm, we can take on a lot more clients in one go because we can parallelize and automate a lot of the work that needs to be done. So take, for example, making the marketing materials. Usually you put together what's called like an information memo for the business. And this is going to be like a 20, 30-page document that
Right.
you're writing on behalf of the owner. And for a traditional broker, they're going to be sitting down doing that by hand. It's going to take them a couple of weeks to really like get it done, as opposed to us where we can do it in a matter of like an hour or so. And so like those time savings going from like a few weeks to like an hour in the amount of time that it takes us to produce our outputs, that lets us take on a lot more clients in one go while still giving them the highest quality output that we can.
Right, right, got it. So we are just passing Founders Inc., right? We had a very good program, right?
Yeah,
And I mean, the learnings that we got there was like, pretty awesome, right? So
definitely.
from Founders Inc., like, where we had the first chat to now, right? It's been a couple of months, right? So what has evolved now?
Yeah, definitely. I think my thinking on this space has evolved quite a bit. When I first entered Founders Inc., I knew I wanted to do something in this sort of business succession space, but I had no real like angle into what exactly it is. And I think the evolution has really been going just from like initial customer interviews to having a couple hypotheses to testing them out to like now actually being able like to work with actual sellers and like get their first deals out.
Right.
And yeah, so right now I'm starting to marketing my first few like sellers, and so that's been like a huge evolution from a few months ago where I was just calling people up all day to figure out like what their biggest pain points were.
Right, right, right. So that's great. So, I mean, shifting gears a bit, right? So then now, you're originally from Egypt, right?
Yeah.
Cairo, right? So,
Yeah.
so from Cairo to moving to here, right? So, it's and then like from Google to TikTok, right? I mean, quite a journey, right? Why don't you enlighten us on this whole journey, like how it has been, the migrations, right? So then moving to big tech, right? So, how has this whole journey been like?
Yeah, definitely. It's honestly been just the ride of a lifetime. So I studied computer science at Brown University. And really the whole impetus of like coming to the US for me was like I have always been someone who wants to work on the biggest problems on the biggest possible stage.
Hmm,
And so I went to Brown to study initially international development studies, and the idea was to go home and really just help with the economy and like figure everything out there. But I pretty quickly realized that without having a tangible skill set, the amount of impact that I can have gets limited very quickly. And so I pivoted into computer science because I knew that through software, I could really, really scale up the impact of whatever work it is that I want to do.
hmm.
And that was the same logic behind going to Google and going to TikTok. If I'm going to be building software, then I want to do it on the biggest possible stage and learn what that means to do that. And yeah, now that I've done that, I want to also learn what it means to start something from scratch and like grow something as opposed to come in like mid show and like things are already like have been already scaled up. So I really see that as being the next journey in my career and what I'm doing with Silver Surf right now.
Right, right. So a lot of this is also stemming from your personal experience that your parents were building a small business, right? And then
Yeah.
they had a successful exit, right?
Yeah.
So and like why don't you walk us through like that journey, like how it has been, like what sort of challenges that you saw when that was happening, right? But it has been successful also, right?
Yeah.
So maybe like take us through that journey.
Definitely, yeah. So theirs was definitely like as smooth as things can go. They were not even going to market. They got approached by someone who wanted to expand into the Middle East
Right.
and saw like their company as a good opportunity to be a starting point in the region. But even within that, like there was a lot of due diligence and a lot of like back and forth. So even though someone approached them and they were interested, just getting the company to a place where they could explain it to someone and getting it like ready to be sold still took a while and there was like some back and forth, some question marks, but that's the best case. A lot of their peer group had to like actively go to market as opposed to being approached by a buyer.
Hmm.
And for them it ended up a lot of times being like multiple years to really get like everything in order and be able to like find the right people who would be interested in it, all of that. And like some of them were successful, others weren't. So I've seen it a lot of times where people like build out their life their life's work and they build out a huge company and then they're forced to shut it down at the end. So that's really what Silver Surf is trying to address is making sure that that outcome gets more and more rare for business owners.
Right, right, right. I see. So through this journey, I mean, you seeing this firsthand, right? So, um, like, I mean, now you have a couple of tools, right, that you are giving for these businesses, right? But I mean, like, one thing is this valuation tool, right? So there's another one called CIM generator, right?
Yeah.
So why don't you take us through, like, what these particular tools are and how these would really help?
Yeah, so we have a series of tools. They're really all geared around getting the business as legible as possible before it goes to market.
Hmm,
Because from doing a lot of research, the issue isn't so much like a lack of buyers or a lack of places to market yourself. It's more so that a lot of times business owners will come to market not having done the prep work that it takes to make their business sellable. So everything that I do is based around that. So there's a few tools that actually help make the business sellable, make it easy to understand as a potential buyer. So the first, like you mentioned, is the valuation.
yeah.
So a lot of times business owners are going to be very emotionally attached to their business and therefore come up
And
with
they
a
don't know what valuability is as well,
exactly.
right?
So
Yeah.
they're pricing it based about how they feel about their business rather than like what the market actually
Hmm,
will pay for this kind of business. So the valuation tool does two things. It actually gives you like the number or like the range that you can be working within, but it gives you market comparables to help you like anchor yourself not in emotions, but rather in data. And then once we've done that, we're all happy about like the general price range that we're aiming for. Next, we go to the info memo generator.
right.
And that's essentially right, telling the story of your business. So not just from the financials, but also from its community impact, from its customer concentration, what it means to own this business, really just making it a compelling opportunity to a potential buyer.
Hmm.
The next piece that we do is getting the business's informal knowledge down. So another big deal killer is owner dependency.
Right.
The owner will be running the business for like 30, 40 years. They know everything about it. They've never written anything down in their lives. And so people are worried that when they buy this business and the owner leaves, all the knowledge about how to run it also leaves with them. So we have a process where we get all of the owner's knowledge down onto paper. We even sometimes make an LLM twin of the owner. So you still have
Right.
them at your disposal when they leave the business.
Right.
And then finally, once we've done all that legwork, it's time to get you out in front of people. So whereas a traditional broker would usually just post you on a few websites and sit and wait for inbound to come, we're a lot more proactive in our approach where we'll scrape like over 1,000 people who we think could make sense as buyers for you. And we'll do mass outbound to them so that we get you a bunch of competing offers and are able to drive up the price and get you the best possible deal that we can.
Right, right, right. And buyer finder is another thing, right? So, is it like more like a matchmaking process, right? So, how do you match it, right? Do you use AI there, or like what's the process on that front?
Yeah, definitely. So it's both AI and both also just domain expertise. So the part that we set up initially is just knowing for different kinds of businesses what are both the obvious and the non-obvious people who might be interested in buying this kind of business. And then once we, as people with experience in M&A, have all like put this knowledge together, now the AI steps in where
Hmm.
it takes in the business, it takes in the types of buyers that we've thought it would be interested in this kind of business, and then it does the legwork of actually going out and like gathering like 1,000, 100,000, like 1,100 potential buyers, and then writing the kind of messaging that it thinks would be most compelling to that person.
Hmm.
And then it's self-learning, right? So like the more that we do this, the more data we have about like who tends to respond, who doesn't tend to respond, what kind of messaging they respond to, and we're able to get more and more sharp in our outbound with every sale that we do from now on.
Right, right. And you have your model. I mean, you're not only directly working with buyers, right? You
Yeah,
also work with brokers, right? Sort of, it could be like, CPAs or exit planners, attorneys, right? So then these different kinds of brokers, right? So, how does it work, right? So then is it easier to work when you're working with brokers? Is that easy, or is like, is it easier to for you to like, when you're actually working with direct sellers?
definitely. Yeah. So I initially, when I started, was trying to sell tooling to brokers and ended up pivoting away and more so to, like you're saying, directly to sellers
Right.
for a few reasons. I think in traditional brokerages, because so much of the work is manual, each individual broker ends up only doing a few deals per year. And so when you're talking to a broker and you're trying to sell them software, they're working from that mindset of like, oh, I do 3 deals in a year. I don't know if it makes sense for me to buy, software to just facilitate the 3 deals I do in a year. And they don't always necessarily see the value prop of like, oh, this is going to unlock actually being able to do way more than 3 deals in a year.
Right.
And then I also just thinking about the TAM, right? Like the TAM of like selling software to brokers versus the TAM of like selling companies, period.
Hmm.
Ended up making me pivot away from like selling tooling to brokers and more so to actually be opening my own brokerage. But I do still work a
So
lot with like,
you act as a brokerage
yeah,
basically.
exactly. So
Right.
we're opening our own brokerage. And yeah, I do still work a lot with like CPAs and lawyers and like the non-broker people in the picture because they're a very, very valuable like referral channel. A big thing with being able to work with a seller is approaching them through people that they already trust.
Hmm.
And so the CPAs, the lawyers, and all that, they already have the seller's trust and they already know that the seller is ready to take on this step.
Hmm.
So I've been working a lot with them as sort more so like referral partners, as allies, rather than like doing the work itself.
Right, right, right. So
Yeah.
some rapid fire questions, right?
Please,
So
yeah.
what's the hottest take on SMB software space right now?
Yeah, too many people approach, I think, the SMB software space from an intellectual place as opposed to like a lived experience place.
Hmm.
And then they try and replicate what works in enterprise to SMB when it's really like two completely different playbooks. So I think I see that being a very common stumbling block of people who are building for SMB for the first time.
Right, right. What's the most overrated thing in tech right now, and what's the most underrated thing?
I think the most overrated thing in tech right now is this idea that the frontier labs are going to eat every single company and that there is no moat left given how Anthropic's shipping everything all
Hmm.
the time.
Hmm.
I think what actually on the inverse of that was super underrated is like domain expertise and being able to leverage both the frontier models and also your domain knowledge about a specific space and bring those together to bring something more vertical and more niche that a frontier company wouldn't actually get into. I think that's the most underrated play in tech right now.
Right. So one of the fights that you're in is it ESOPs versus PE? Is that the fight that kind of you're in?
Yeah, it's definitely part of
Right.
the question, right? Is like who do these businesses actually get sold to at the end of the day?
Right.
I definitely see a lot of pros for both. I would say I lean a little bit more ESOP just because
Right.
I appreciate the way in which it financially empowers the employees of the company. Because I see it all the time where employees have been at a company for a really long time and they have the knowledge to run the company, but not necessarily the capital. And I think ESOP is a really good solution for
Hmm.
that. But PE is a lot more scalable and it gives a lot of owners exits. So there's definitely a time and place for each of them depending on the situation.
Right. If there's someone like right now who's in Google or TikTok, right, who's considering to leave, right?
Yeah.
What is that one thing that you would say to them, right? That like they would you wouldn't have been able to tell if you were there.
Yeah, I'd say just take the leap.
Hmm.
I think I spent a lot of time sort of like daydreaming and feeling like I had to figure everything out exactly perfectly like before I could quit my job. And so I came into company building with a lot of assumptions about exactly what I need to build based on just doing a lot of online research. And very quickly all of that was like kind of thrown out the window when I started actually talking to people, actually getting out there.
Right.
So I think, yeah, like you can only do so much like thinking before you actually go do it, and all the learning you need to do, you're gonna learn like as you execute.
Right. So now, I mean, I want to hear your thoughts about the space that we are building as well, right? So then now, main direction, like what we are driving forward is like we build personas around different products, right? I mean, now you told, right? I mean, these businesses, a business owner specifically, right, who's been running this business for 30 years time. Sometimes they might not even have used QuickBooks for an example, right?
Right, yeah.
And the way how I mean, they could have, right? But then also, like, the way how they would operate software is completely different of
Yeah,
how we are using software here in San
definitely.
Francisco,
Still a
right?
lot of pen and paper involved,
Exactly, right?
yeah.
So, and now, one of the areas, like, that I would like to pick your brain is, right? So then, what we are doing is we build personas around different types of people that's actually using this software, right?
Mm,
Then now, especially like with AI, you can build so much so features, right? You can build a product just within a day, right?
yeah.
But would this product really make sense in the perspective of real users, or you ship out a new feature, right? Would this feature really make sense to my actual users, right? So
Mm,
this one of the questions that we ask, right? And then before you actually really put the product out there, can you simulate these different types of personas, right? And
mm,
then really see if this product makes sense altogether or this feature makes sense altogether, right? So
yeah,
that's kind of the direction what we are building towards with this persona based simulation approach, right? But I'm curious to understand from your world, right, how
yeah.
this might be relevant.
It's definitely super relevant because initially we were planning on actually launching two things in one go. We were
Right.
planning on launching the brokerage, which is very like handheld,
Hmm.
and we're also planning to launch like a self-serve platform. But then I think a big issue that we ran into with the self-serve platform is exactly what you're talking about. Like a lot of these older people that we work with not necessarily being the most like comfortable with learning a new interface, learning a new UI, and that was part of like why we ended up going the like route where we're sort of the human interface to it and we're operating our own tools.
Right.
But in the future, we would really, really love to do like a self-serve platform. I think something like what you're building at Marketrix would be super, super relevant to make sure that what we're putting out there is actually usable and useful and like understandable to the demographic that we're working with.
Right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd love to give you a quick 2 minutes demo, right?
Yeah,
So then,
please.
probably the first self-driving demo that's been done, right? So then I'll
Yeah.
give you a very brief demo, and then I'd love to hear your top of your mind feedback,
Okay,
right?
that sounds good.
So basically, what we are doing with marketers, I mean, like you add the credentials to your application,
Of
right?
course.
And then it could be the staging environment or the production environment, and after you add that in, you bring your initial knowledge base about the product, right?
Mm,
So that could be the context in terms of the existing documentation that you have or the
sure.
walkthrough videos, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, like we run like a web scrape search, and then we get to know about your product product as well, right?
Sure.
On top of it, you could connect your existing data sources, right? So that's a Posthogo, Hotjar, right? So then we first of all understand what your real users are doing within the application, right?
Yeah.
Then it's that understanding that we use combined with the simulated user understanding that we use to build these personas around the product, right? So
Mm.
for an example, like, it could be pipeline driven VP Victor, right? So what is the personality of that particular persona, right?
Mm.
And like, what's the behavioral DNA of that particular persona, right?
Sure.
What's a persona profile, right? What are the key features of that persona, right?
Yeah.
So we build this profile of the different types of personas of the product, right?
Mm.
Then that is what we use to run these simulations, right?
Got it.
So you could, like, bind a particular persona and then ask that particular persona to actually use your product, right? And then
Mm.
provide you with insights, right?
Yeah.
So how a single simulation would work is, right, we get that particular persona and then we spin up a virtual browser, and basically, like, that person would be using the application in a step-by-step manner, right?
Got it.
While we do all of that, we map out the complete progress, right?
Mm.
And then also, like, we build a comprehensive mind map of the product, right?
Sure.
So that's what we use, right, basically to run all these QA flows, right, to actually understand if these particular features or product works in the perspective of your real users, right?
Yeah.
Or of course to run these user studies, right?
Makes sense.
So that's the overall direction, like, what we are building in Laila. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, how this would be relevant, right, within
Yeah.
your space.
Definitely. I think it's really easy to think about like sellers as a monolith and
Yeah,
like, they all have one mindset and they all want the same thing. But actually, from working with sellers, like, there's so many sub personas of sellers and so many different things that sellers will be optimizing for. So I think even with what we were talking about like the building a self-serve platform, I think being able to spin up market tricks and try it out from the perspective of a lot of different personas to
right.
see what resonates, what doesn't, what to switch around and be able to like do those tests before we go to market as opposed to like on the fly with clients and losing clients because we haven't met their needs. I think market tricks would be a huge unlock in that regard.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you. So the last question, right? So there's a 70-year-old somewhere in America, right, that has built a business over, say, 40 years time, right?
Yeah.
And then is like, they want to retire, right, but they can't really find the exact buyer. What
Sure.
would you want them to know?
Yeah, I would want them to know that really, really, really your sale all comes down to the preparation that you do before going to market. And that now with Silver Surf, we're starting to unlock ways to be able to access that affordably.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'd love for them to come and work with us. And so we can help them get the best possible deal by doing all the legwork that it takes to present yourself to a buyer in the best possible light.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So where can people find you and Silver Surf?
Yeah, so we're at silversurf.co. You can also find us on LinkedIn, just Silversurf, and I'm on Twitter as well, Laila Silversurf.
All right. Thanks a lot,
Awesome.
Laila.
Thanks for
Really
having me.
appreciate it.